The Sportscast, December 16th, 2020. If you haven't yet, please subscribe in all our channels, Periscope, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And if you're listening on Apple Podcast, please leave a rating and a review. It will help us out tremendously. We're also on online radio. You can listen to our radio on our app, the Sportscast app for iPhone, or on our website, thesportscast.net. And on our website, you can follow the latest in news and sports news, of course, college recruiting. A big day for a lot of kids signing today. Anyways, you can check out our app on the App Store and also our website. This episode is brought to you by the Sportscast app, and definitely go download the app. You get the notifications on the latest podcast like this one, and also listen to our radio 24/7 and read the latest in news. A lot going on in sports this fall, and I can't wait for the spring, but because the NBA is coming, so things are going to happen. Today we have a special guest all the way from the West Coast, Chris Courtney. He is a writer. He covers recruiting, college football. He writes for the whole flock of ducks, and he has a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge when it comes to the Pac-12, and obviously when you mentioned the Ducks, it's the Oregon Ducks. Chris Courtney, welcome to the Sportscast.
Thanks for having me.
So, Chris Courtney, I found you on Twitter because you're pretty vibrant. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your website.
Yeah, so I launched Whole Flock of Ducks back in 2018, before the 2018 college football season. And, it's been kind of a nice little side project that I've had in addition to a real job. But before that, I covered Oregon recruiting, covered Oregon football for Scout.com and 24/7 Sports for about 5 years. Born and raised in Eugene, and have grown up around the Oregon football program for a very long time, and am still fairly plugged in and kind of attentive to kind of all the different things that are happening around the program, both around the team and on the recruiting trail. So so right now it's kind of in an amateur role, but it's certainly a passion project of mine and something that I've been really excited about over the last 3 years and how the site has grown. So.
Yes, here at the Sportscast, we've been following Oregon, especially with Justin Herbert and Mario Cristobal, which he's from Miami, and I am as well from Miami. Tell the audience a quick scenario. I mean, is this the Oregon Duck generation? I mean, obviously, yes, they haven't won a national championship yet, but we've seen a project right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing kind of this program continually ascend here. Since the early 2000s, this has been a program that's been kind of on the national radar. But I think, as each year has kind of gone by, at least as the decades have gone by, I think people have taken Oregon more and more seriously as a power on the college football stage. And so, obviously with the Chip Kelly years, that kind of took Oregon to another level from where they were previously under Mike Bellotti. And you're seeing kind of the next phase in that development, I guess, as Oregon kind of tries to emerge as a national championship contender under Mario Cristobal, and his going into, or I guess his third season is about to end now. You've seen what he has done on the recruiting trail. You saw what he did in his second season as Oregon's head coach, winning Pac-12 Championship and a Rose Bowl. The arrow is absolutely pointing up in terms of this program. Now it's just kind of a matter of, getting it done on the field. This year has not really gone to according to script, I think, for a lot of people, but I don't think 2020 has been kind of an unscripted year in general. So I think the Ducks are trending in the right direction. I think a lot of people are excited about the direction of the program and kind of what is being built in Eugene at this time.
Now, of course, Oregon was definitely a favorite for the Pac-12. Also with USC. They had 2 losses this past couple weeks. Tell us what happened with those losses. Was it just a freak accident, or just the other teams were way better?
No, it's certainly not a talent issue. with this team. I think it really what it comes down to is an experience issue. It is a leadership issue. It is a confidence issue. You look at Oregon's roster, and there's no doubt that they have the players to stack up with anybody in the Pac-12 and a number of teams nationally. But they are also they're their youngest team in FBS right now, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about when you think about the players that they returned on defense from a year ago, some of the players that they have coming back at running back and receiver. But yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned it a little bit at the top, Justin Herbert having to replace him, a senior quarterback with a guy who his first start came this year. You're replacing all 5 starters along the offensive line. In fact, you're replacing 6 guys that got regular time in the offensive line rotation. So that's a huge thing. And then, you throw in departure of guys on defense like Troy Dye, Bryson Young, Lamar Winston. You lose Javon Holland and Thomas Graham and Brady Breeze to opt-outs, and then all of a sudden your defense has taken a hit there. And that was a unit that was maybe the strongest unit of any in the Pac-12 last year, was that Oregon defense. And that's kind of what they leaned on to help them win a Rose Bowl. And so when you take, all that into account, I don't know if it's necessary. I don't think anybody, around the Oregon program necessarily expected the Ducks to lose to Oregon State and Cal in back-to-back weeks. I think you talk to anybody that's seen as inexcusable. Those are inexcusable losses. But you kind of begin to understand it when you really look a little bit closer at the roster and kind of how things have been, how things have been kind of going this year in general. And it's tough. They've managed to stay healthy, which is, both in terms of football perspective and in terms of COVID, which I think it speaks to kind of the dedication this team has to kind of doing all the right things and following protocol and all that stuff. But there's no question that, this has been a disjointed year for the program and for a lot of the players kind of stepping into new roles here in 2020.
What are your thoughts about the current quarterback that replaced Herbert? I know it starts with an S. I think it's pronounced Show or.
Yeah, Tyler Shuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he certainly has shown glimpses of the, a lot of the talent that a lot of people thought that he had coming into Oregon out of high school. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of Chandler, Arizona, which the program that he hails from, Hamilton, is a perennial power in the kind of the Phoenix metro area. So he has kind of a pedigree. He came in and was the understudy to Justin Herbert for the last 2 seasons. Got his opportunity to start this year, and I think he has had some growing pains. He's had some moments where he looks dynamic as both a runner and a thrower. But he also has moments where he gets a little bit scattershot and, attacking downfield, doesn't necessarily have the pocket presence of a seasoned quarterback at this point. He's been turnover prone, and he probably should have more turnovers to his name than he really does. He's been lucky that he's had a few interceptions dropped. So, it hasn't been the most efficient season for Tyler Shuck. And I think moving forward, depending on kind of how that, how the, some of the incoming talent with the 2021 recruiting class, how they compete, or I guess how Tai Thompson competes specifically, because he's the only quarterback coming in from 2020, how he competes with Shuck and Jay Butterfield and perhaps even Anthony Brown, who's a grad transfer from Boston College, who's got the opportunity to stick around next season. He's going to be pushed. And so, it'll be interesting to see how he plays in the USC game. I personally think that this is in some ways kind of a make or break game for Tyler Shuck. I think he's really got an opportunity to either solidify himself as kind of Oregon starter moving forward with the way that he plays, or, he could open the door for, other competitors to step in and potentially kind of knock him off, QB1 status on the Oregon depth chart.
Yeah, that was my next question. I know that Oregon had a good offseason this past offseason, and they got a couple of quarterbacks. Who do you think will be the quarterback for next season?
I think until we see Cristobal and offensive coordinator Joe Moorhead show a willingness to pull Tyler Shuck, and there have been instances this season where you could point to that, you know, they've maybe been within their rights to do that. I think that this job is probably Tyler Shuck's moving forward. But I mean, let's face it. I mean, if Oregon loses to USC on Friday and they lose in somewhat resounding fashion, I think you're going to start to hear more and more people kind of talk about making a change at quarterback. And if that happens, you know, like I said, you've got Anthony Brown, who's a grad transfer, who's got a lot of experience from his previous stint at Boston College. Jay Butterfield was a 4-star recruit in the 2020 recruiting class, who is currently the Oregon's third-string quarterback and has been impressing coaches, you know, over the course of the offseason and into this season. And then Tai Thompson is a guy that also is from Arizona, the same general area where Tyler Shuck is from. He's a player who's on the verge of maybe earning his 5th star, depending on which, you know, recruiting rankings you subscribe to. He's a player that's going to be coming in with a lot of hype. He's got a big arm, is athletic. He looks like a player who could potentially push for playing time as a true freshman next season. So, you know, it's really kind of, I think a lot hinges on Friday's game. I really do. I think with a strong performance, I think Shuck can kind of solidify himself. But if it's a shaky performance, you know, I don't think there's any guarantees, you know, heading into next season that he is for sure the guy to lead this team on offense.
Well, Oregon does have a quarterback pool, so they got a couple options if Shuck does not come through. As Chris mentioned, this Friday is the Pac-12 Championship. It was originally going to be Washington versus USC. Washington had to pull out because of COVID cases. And Oregon luckily made it to the Pac-12. Originally, they were planning to have Oregon play Colorado for a third-place game, which I don't never hear that in college football. It's typically a soccer thing. Chris, tell me your reaction, and are you feeling lucky because this happened?
Well, I think Duck fans are feeling somewhat charmed right now just because, yeah, they did really kind of stumble into this opportunity. I don't think you'll find any Oregon fans, at least you won't be finding any sane Oregon fans that will be saying that they deserved this opportunity. I think based on the way that they have played, particularly over the last 2 weeks, I don't think you can say that. But Oregon also has, you know, their opportunity, as in Washington, to kind of decide it on the field, taken away from them because of the outbreak within the Huskies program. And so yeah, like I think you won't find Mario Cristobal or really anybody associated with Oregon apologizing for the opportunity that they've been given. But I think everybody knows that, hey, this isn't a team that is playing its best football right now. In fact, if anything, they're playing some of their worst football. And, you know, they've gotten worse as the season has gone on. And I don't know if that's, again, if it is a confidence thing or if it's a lack of experience thing. But it's become evident. You know, Tyler Shuck's level of play has regressed over the last couple of weeks. Offensive line's play has regressed over the last couple of weeks. The defense, which has been kind of the whipping post for a lot of people since the beginning of the season, they finally had a good game against Cal, but you really don't know what you're getting from that group from week to week. And facing USC, you know, you've got a dynamic offense led by Keaton Slovis and a host of receivers that are going to give Oregon secondary fits. They've got an opportunistic defense. These aren't necessarily things that are inspiring a lot of confidence if you're a Duck fan looking ahead to this game and thinking, okay, you know, what are Oregon's chances? I think there's a lot kind of stacked against Oregon. I think they have the talent to win, but they still have not played, you know, they haven't played anywhere near a complete game yet this season. So yeah, I don't think anybody should have a ton of confidence if you're an Oregon fan at this point. But it's not like, you know, USC hasn't been or shown vulnerabilities of their own. You know, they nearly lost at UCLA. They nearly lost at Arizona. They nearly lost to Arizona State. And so, you know, you can kind of justify it and kind of rationalize it however you want. But the truth of the matter is, at least if you're an Oregon fan, I think you got to have legitimate concerns about what this team is going to look like when they've got, this big opportunity before them. Because in truth, this is the biggest game that they will have played this season.
And we'll get to that prediction later in the show, and love to hear. And it's, which is interesting. I know at the beginning of the season, we had an episode where we were saying I think USC could make it to the Pac-12 Championship game, and they did because they had a good good talent pool, obviously. But obviously, what I understand, their front office is a little bit messy.
At USC?
Yeah, at USC, or was that UCLA? I can't remember which of the two.
Yeah, well, as far as USC goes, Clay Helton has been kind of on the hot seat here for the last several seasons, really. I mean, I think you ask anybody who's a USC fan or follows that program closely, it feels like Clay Helton has kind of been a lame duck head coach for the past few years. He has managed to hold on to his job, and I think you have to credit him for being a survivalist in that way. Look, like USC certainly they have not been performing as a program up to the standard that I think traditionally has been expected of them. They haven't been the worst program in the Pac-12. I think many probably would have expected them to be competing for more Pac-12 championships, or at least have more appearances in the Pac-12 championship game than they have to this point. But look, they are still one of the most talented teams in the conference, and whatever kind of screwiness or dysfunction is going on behind the scenes within that program, they've managed, at least this season, to put it together. They are undefeated. They're ranked 13th in the latest college football playoff rankings. They're a team that is playing as good, if not better, than any Pac-12 team out there right now. And so I think you have to respect that, and I think you have to go into this game knowing that, hey, this USC team is a team that is at least capable of doing something that I haven't done yet. Under Clay Helton, and that has performed really, really well. Have an undefeated season, and I know it kind of has an asterisk next to it because of COVID, but have an undefeated season and have a chance to play in a New Year's Six bowl game. And I think, however you feel about USC, that is the reality that is kind of facing them right now. And if they were to win on Friday and then earn that berth into a New Year's Six bowl game, it's hard to say that that they aren't at least making progress, kind of returning to form. We'll see how that plays out in the future. I don't necessarily think that this season gets Clay Helton off the hot seat, but it certainly buys him a little bit more time and a little bit more leeway with the new athletic director that they have there.
We'll see what happens, and we'll predict this game a little bit later in the show. News this week. Auburn fired their coach, Gus Malzahn. And the first thing on Twitter was Mario Cristobal, number one prospect to take over the Auburn team. I was thinking the same when I saw that news. Oregon fans, I heard they were panicking. But Oregon is planning to have an extension with Mario Cristobal. Chris, what have you heard? And as Oregon locked Mario Cristobal?
Yeah, so as of right now, nothing official has come down. Now that could change literally at any given moment. I know that the board of trustees at the university has a meeting scheduled for, I believe, tomorrow, Thursday. So my guess is that is essentially just going to kind of cross the T's, dot the I's in terms of approving this new extension for Mario Cristobal. I would expect once that extension is kind of approved and confirmed, I would expect him to be the highest paid coach in the Pac-12. I would expect him to be a coach that is among the most handsomely paid coaches in college football. And I would expect, kind of everything that has been built at Oregon since he has kind of ascended to the head coaching position, I would expect that to kind of continue going, and that means I think the recruiting is gonna continue being at a strong at a high level like it has been the last 3 cycles, and I would expect that for really kind of the momentum around the program to continue to kind of be rolling in a really positive way, because Mario Cristobal has shown an ability to kind of transform this program in a post-Chip Kelly kind of Mark Helfrich era. I know a lot of people were concerned about that, when Chip Kelly left and was replaced by Mark Helfrich, how long they would really be able to kind of, hold on to their place within, the kind of the hierarchy of college football. And they certainly slipped in 2016 and kind of reemerged a little bit under Willie Taggart in 2017. But when Taggart left for Florida State, I mean, that was a big setback for the program, just in terms of it kind of cut the program down at the knees a little bit in terms of the recruiting class. I think fortunately for them, they had somebody like Mario Cristobal already on staff who has this reputation as a dogged recruiter. He's got head coaching experience, and he's a coach that is highly respected by his players, and they all pushed for him. They all basically petitioned for him to be the head coach. And so when you have that kind of support within the program for a guy like that, and somebody who has kind of slowly but surely delivered on a lot of things that he has been promising and he's been touting, I think that, seeing this extension come down, whenever that is, I think if you're a Duck fan, you feel really good about that. I think you move forward now knowing that you've got a coach that is being paid what his, fair market value is, and that you are going to have a guy in place who's going to be able to work tirelessly to kind of keep this program at or near the top of the conference and competing, I think for Duck fans, hopefully, for college football playoff berths.
Yeah, Chris is absolutely right. When it comes to sports business, things can change in a moment. Not saying that Auburn has a good chance, but hypothetically speaking, Chris, if Mario did go to Auburn, do you think has the capability to beat Alabama and Nick Saban?
Well, he's certainly familiar with the Alabama program. He was an assistant coach there for 4 years, and I think, as he likes to put it, he kind of learned graduate level football while he was at Alabama. And so I think kind of his familiarity with the program helps. His familiarity with the SEC in terms of the competition in the SEC, both on and off the field for recruits. He gets that, and I think he would be able to hold his own against anybody in the SEC just based on the way that he kind of approaches recruiting. But I mean, let's face it. Auburn is the second fiddle program in the state of Alabama. When you look at kind of the landscape in the SEC, it's Alabama, it's LSU, it's Georgia, it's Florida. Auburn is kind of in that conversation too, but a little bit further down on the list. And so, I think he would have some success there. Would he have more success than Gus Malzahn? I'm not confident in that being the case. And if you are in Mario Cristobal's position, kind of how things work at Auburn when the team starts to slip a little bit, your job, certainly becomes a popular topic of conversation, 2-3 years in, and, you still haven't gotten all of your players into the program yet. It's a lot of stress, and it's a lot to deal with as a coach who, has young children, has a young family, and, he's been in the state of Alabama before, but, kind of picking up and having to figure out what your next move is after potentially failing at a place like Auburn. I think that's something that you have to kind of consider when you're in his position. You're considering what your options are. I think if you were to give people kind of close to Mario Cristobal truth serum, I think they would probably tell you that a lot of this flirtation with Auburn was mostly to get a new contract kind of solidified with Oregon. I think he was using that as leverage, and kudos to him for doing it. I think, I think the plan was to have him be extended in terms of the contract, before the pandemic hit. And then once the pandemic hit, that put things on hold. And so this is a little bit of a long time coming for him. But with that said, I think if he were to genuinely be considering Auburn, I think those are some of the things that you would have to consider, because I don't think you can expect to walk into that program and necessarily, be churning out 10-win seasons year over year from the jump. I just don't think that's a realistic expectation that you need to have as at least as the guy that's taking over for a head coach, Gus Malzahn, who, at least as an assistant, has appeared in 2 national championship games. He has won SEC championships at Auburn. He has gotten that program, taken that program to heights that aren't seldom seen that are seldom seen at Auburn, I should say. So that's a guy who got a lot of success. And so if you think that you're going to have more success than him, you're probably looking at it pretty optimistically. And look, all these coaches have egos, but I think that, at the end of the day, you have to be kind of real with yourself. And I think Auburn is a fine job. And I think that whoever it takes over that job is going to have an opportunity to do some special things there. But the reality is the reality. And when you got Alabama as your main rival, and you've got to go through them every single year to even have a chance of coming out of the SEC West, that's a pretty tall hill to climb. So.
Yeah, and I was, speaking to you before and been telling everyone, I think Mario has a great project going on with Oregon, and I think leaving now would be like leaving it halfway. And I think he has something special, and I could definitely see bigger things with Oregon. Obviously, going to the playoffs, obviously winning a natty. So I hope he stays in Oregon, which I'm pretty much 80-90% sure, to be honest, that he'll stay. And of course, you can't beat Alston Stadium and the Nike brand, but that's beyond my point. Today was National Recruit. Today, a lot of the high school players signed letters of intent. Chris, tell us, how did Oregon do and the rest of the Pac-12?
Well, for Oregon, this is by far. I wouldn't say by far, but this is their highest rated class in program history. I mean, you just look at the commitments that they have, and the guys that they signed. They signed 20 prospects today. Of those 20, 16 players are 4-star rated recruits. There isn't any 5-star rated recruits, at least not at this point, in this class. But 16 4-star recruits, that's more than any program in the entire country. Now, obviously, some of those programs sign, multiple 5-star recruits, but just in general, it really goes to show you kind of the level at which this program is recruiting right now, and kind of the talent that is coming in. It's, I think it is the 3rd or the 4th year in a row that Oregon's class has been top rated in the Pac-12, which is really saying something. So, yeah, I think at this point, if you're an Oregon fan and you're kind of looking ahead here and projecting forward what this recruiting class could do, and right now they sit at 6th nationally right now. They could go up depending on some of the guys that signed. But, I mean, you have to feel very, very confident in what they've done, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I kind of mentioned Tai Thompson, who is, one of the better, more highly rated quarterbacks, I should say, in the entire country. He kind of headlines that group to a degree, but really I think there's 3 guys that I think you have to mention as kind of the crown jewels of this recruiting class for Oregon. This Troy Franklin, a 4-star receiver from the Bay Area, had offers from everybody nationally. And then Kingsley Suamatia, who is a 4-star left tackle from the state of Utah. He is again, similar to Franklin and some of these other recruits that Oregon signed, had offers from the Alabamas and Georgias and Florida, from the top programs in the country. And Oregon landed him. He's got a close relationship with the Sewell family. Penei Sewell was someone who was working out with Kingsley a lot during the off season. Kingsley's a former high school teammate of Noah Sewell, who's, arguably even as a freshman, one of Oregon's top defensive players this year. So there's a lot of ties there between Sewell Mattia and Oregon, and just in general, I think that you really want to focus in on one area. That offensive line class that they signed it is among the best in the country. I don't know if you would rank it number one. I think Alabama has done some nice things there this year for sure. But when you couple Sewell Mattia with somebody like Bram Walden, who's I believe he's the second rated recruit in the state of Arizona. By the way, Oregon signed 6 players who were rated number one in their respective states. 6 players who were rated as the number one recruit. So again, it goes to show you kind of the strength of the program there in that regard. But as far as offensive line goes, yeah, Bram Walden is a tremendous prospect, 4-star recruit. Jonah Miller is another prospect from the state of Arizona who's a 4-star recruit out of Tucson. And then Jackson Light, who is, I believe, right behind Kingsley Sewell-Mattia, is number 2 rated recruit in the state of Utah, one of the top center prospects in the country. That's a unit in any time that you are kind of led by Mario Cristobal and you have kind of his imprint on this team. You know that the offensive line is going to be a major point of emphasis, and so they've definitely done that this year. They sprinkled in some really highly touted receivers. Troy Franklin, like I mentioned, Dante Thornton is another kid from Baltimore, 4-star recruit. I think is the 6th rated wide receiver in the country. The 2 tight ends that they got, Moliki Matavayo and Terrence Ferguson, probably the 2 top tight ends on the West Coast this cycle. So, any way you slice it, there's a lot to be kind of optimistic and pleased with if you're an Oregon fan or just somebody who is observing kind of recruiting this year. You really see what Oregon has done, and you can't help but just kind of be surprised or at least a little bit impressed with what they've done.
And, of course, there's another signing period, I believe it was in February. How's that looking for that month?
Yeah, so I think at least as far as Oregon goes, there's a few guys out there that they are still kind of pursuing, a couple kind of highly touted guys. One is 4-star corner Sierra Wright from Southern California. I know that he is considering USC and Arizona State. Those are 2 programs that I think have maybe have a little bit of an edge on Oregon right now. And the other one is one of the highest rated recruits in the country who is yet to sign, and that is JT Tuimalau from the Seattle area. He and Corey Foreman were kind of going back and forth in terms of who's not only top prospect on the West Coast, but maybe the top prospect in the entire country. Oregon's in that mix too, but Alabama and Ohio State, they are probably the favorites right now for him. USC is kind of lingering too. Washington is kind of in the mix too, though I think you'd probably have them a little bit lower down on that list compared to some of these other schools. So, Oregon's going to have a chance to kind of make up some ground. I think, of course, winning on Friday would be huge, and winning a bowl game would do something for them. But, Oregon's got its work cut out for them if they want to improve on this recruiting class that they have, and they want to do so in kind of a dramatic way. They're going to have to win some of those battles here going into February and even beyond. The transfer market is going to be a big thing this season. I know that I think a lot of people are expecting there to be kind of a record number of transfers this year. So there's going to be opportunity for Oregon to kind of acquire more talent between now and the start of the 2021 season. But, the rest of Pac-12 is catching up a little bit. You look at USC's class. They did much better this year than they did last year. They in fact stole, I use that loosely. It didn't really steal, but they were able to flip a commit that was formerly an Oregon commit, Kyron Ware-Hudson. He's a 4-star receiver from Mater Dei High School in Southern California. That traditionally has been a kind of a USC stronghold. But in recent years, Oregon's had a lot of success there. And so USC flipped Kyron Ware-Hudson. They've got Miller Moss and Jackson Dart, 2 quarterbacks committed to this class. Julian Simon is another highly touted prospect from Washington. So USC has done some things this cycle that they did not do last cycle. They finished dead last in the Pac-12 last cycle, which is unheard of. So you look at some of the things that they're doing, you look at some of the things that Cal is doing. I think a lot of people are kind of overlooking the job that Justin Wilcox did this year. I think he assembled a pretty solid recruiting class for Cal standards. So there's definitely some progress being made in the Pac-12 in relation to that. But right now, Oregon is, I think, solidified themselves as kind of the clear-cut top program, at least in terms of recruiting in the Pac-12.
And Mario Cristobal flexing his muscles when it comes to recruiting, definitely being the standout. Any rumor mill when it comes to the transfer area?
You know, at this point, I think it's a little bit too early to tell. I would assume that Oregon will be a player in that regard. You know, they're going to have some openings, but it's going to be really interesting to see kind of how schools across the country kind of manage the rosters and kind of the scholarship limit here. At last check, you know, there hasn't been any kind of extension or additions to kind of the 85-man scholarship limit that's currently in place by the NCAA. And so there's going to be a lot of programs that are going to have to navigate that. There's, you know, this year has been essentially a free year for everybody playing a fall sport. So that includes football. So guys that are currently seniors this year have the opportunity to come back next season. And so I think you're going to see some guys take advantage of that. And that's probably going to take away some potential open spots that might be out there for potential transfers. But at this stage, I just think it's a little bit too early to tell, what could happen on the transfer market. I think, just kind of going to have to see how it plays out and who really makes themselves available kind of during this off season.
And there you have it, Chris Courtney, fleshing us out what's happening in Oregon. It feels like I was just in Eugene right now and getting the scoop at probably, I was going to say at a sports bulletin or at a sports newsletter, Ducks newsletter or something. But there you have it. Anyways, anything else before we head into college football championship predictions?
No, that's pretty much all I got. I think I think if you're an Oregon fan, I think there's a lot to be pleased with in terms of this recruiting class. We're breaking it down on wholeflockofducks.com. We'll have some stories up there tomorrow, kind of addressing some of what Oregon did. But I think in general, you have to be really excited about kind of the direction of the program right now.
Yeah, Oregon is definitely, and like you were saying, Pac-12 is catching up when it comes to recruiting. Even though they're out in like the West area, and people say like the people in the schools in the South get like the great talent, but hey, there's some talent everywhere, and if you can get some like the Southeast or anything, there's always other opportunities elsewhere. I know that I believe. Cristobal has done recruiting in Hawaii and also Samoa. I've been hearing that, but that's a whole different podcast to talk about. Predictions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's start with a big one. Alabama versus Florida, SEC championship game.
Yeah, I think that, Florida, the season that they've had this year, it's been impressive. They've got the two losses, but and I think that they're far more competitive than they've been in previous years when they've made it to the SEC championship. But at the end of the day, I think this is Alabama's game to win. I expect them to put up anywhere between 35, 42 points, something like that. I see them scoring big, scoring often. Florida's defense has not been the stingiest unit, and you're going up against, if you're a Gators fan, you're looking at Alabama and all the weapons that they have on the offensive side of the ball, and you're wondering how you're going to stop Devontae Smith and Mac Jones and Najee Harris. So I think they've got their work cut out for them. I think Alabama wins fairly comfortable. I'm thinking something like 42 to 24, something along those lines.
Yeah, once Florida lost against LSU, my hopes for that to be a close game, maybe not. It's going to happen, and then Alabama's been really peaking at a good time right now. So. And has a Heisman candidate, Devontae Smith. So things are looking good for the Alabama squad. Let's go for the Big 12, Oklahoma versus Iowa State.
Yeah, that's a game I think that it might be one of the more intriguing games of kind of the weekend when you look at the two teams. Iowa State's had a lot of success against Oklahoma the past few years. They are in a position where if things can break their way, Iowa State could maybe find themselves in the college football playoff once this weekend kind of comes to a close. And so, but I think with that said, I like the way that that Oklahoma has been playing here recently. I think Spencer Rattler's kind of starting to settle in a little bit, and he still makes some freshman mistakes and some mistakes that I think Lincoln Riley would probably him rather not make in terms of his decision making. But Oklahoma's got a ton of weapons. I think they've got a lot to play for in this game. I don't think they want to lose for a second time to Iowa State this year. So I think kind of with that motivation factor kind of playing into it, and kind of the way that Oklahoma has improved kind of over this last half of the season, I expect Oklahoma to win. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Oklahoma wins something in the tune of 38-30, somewhere in that neighborhood. That feels about right in terms of the Big 12 championship.
I do agree. I think Oklahoma definitely wants this. Clemson versus Notre Dame, another big game. Can we see Notre Dame beating Clemson again?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the game of the weekend, right? I mean, it's you look at Clemson; they've got Trevor Lawrence available for this game. They didn't have him the first time that they played Notre Dame. I think that loss to Notre Dame was kind of revealing in a lot of ways for Clemson. They got out physicaled by Notre Dame, which when you look at the talent and kind of the players that are on that Clemson side, you just don't hear that happen very often. So I think that there's a major motivating factor here for Clemson to win this game. I think Notre Dame is as physical and as equipped to kind of handle Clemson as they've proved earlier this year, but I think kind of similar to what Oklahoma has going against Iowa State in the Big 12 Championship. I think that Clemson has that similar type of motivation, that similar kind of fire in their belly to win this game and to take home the ACC championship and to kind of solidify their place in the college football playoff. And it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens, whatever the outcome of this game is. It'll be interesting to see kind of how the college football playoff committee kind of interprets that, and whether or not say Clemson wins and Notre Dame is handed that loss. I think they still have a great claim to be in the playoff, and so it'll be very interesting. I think Clemson wins. A prediction, I think it probably ends up being a little bit more low scoring than the first time around. I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of 34-31.
34-31 by a field goal, probably. Lastly, probably the game of the week in the West Coast, of course. Oregon versus Washington in Levi Stadium. Probably no fans, I imagine. Break it down, Chris.
Yeah, I think from the Oregon perspective, I think it's really comes down to, and it's going to sound really simple, but it's just like, can your defense make stops, and can they not only necessarily make stops, but I think force turnovers. This has been a season in which the Oregon defense has been really bad about forcing turnovers. And I think in all but one game this season, they have 0 takeaways. And the one game where they did have a takeaway, they had 4 against UCLA. That's the only game that they were able to kind of turn the opposing team over. And so I think it's going to come down to, can they force USC offense into mistakes? Can they limit them? And in turn, can Oregon's offense figure out a way to not turn the ball over? Can Tyler Shuck play composed? Can the offensive line get into a rhythm and start opening holes for the running game? CJ Verdell, Travis Dye, Cyrus Habibi-Likio. I think, those opportunities could be there, in terms of, I got done saying that USC is one of the more opportunistic defenses in the Pac-12, but in general, they're kind of middle of the road in terms of limiting opponents on the ground and through the air. So I think there's going to be some opportunities for Oregon to kind of take advantage. But, I don't think there's been anything that, if you've been following the Oregon program closely, I don't think there's anything that has occurred, the last 2 to 3 weeks that would give you some sort of expectation that all that's going to change. Maybe they come out a little bit more fired up and a little bit more motivated because they are playing against USC, because there's so much familiarity between these two programs in terms of the players that are on each roster. I think that you're going to have maybe a little bit more kind of spice in that regard. But if I had to make a pick here, I would be inclined to pick USC. I think it's actually going to be a very close game. I think it's going to be very competitive. But in the end, I see USC squeaking it out. I see a 27-21 victory for the Trojans.
Wow, USC, that is definitely an unbiased score. I like that. Hey, it's just reality. You can't avoid it. And if I had to correct myself, I think I might have said Washington is USC versus Oregon. I apologize. Washington was going to play, but they had COVID issues, and Oregon slipped in. But yeah, USC 27-21 should be a good game. All the games are pretty good, but to be honest, and of course, there's other conference games that will go on throughout the day. But these are the games people will be eyeing on, and of course, on Sunday, College Football Playoff Committee will decide the final fate, the 4 spots for the College Football Playoffs. Looking forward to it, which we'll be having a big show at 3 p.m. Eastern, hosted by Nick Rossetti and with George Dixon. With Mr. Dixon, Tyler Turner, Justin Riley, and Kent Doppel from West Coast CFB, which I'm not sure if Chris knows Kent Doppel.
Not familiar, no.
Yeah, he writes for West Coast CFB, college football, and he writes, of course, a lot of things with Pac-12 and I believe it's the Sky League. Don't quote me on that because it's a smaller league. Anyways, random poll question on Twitter, Chris. What is your favorite Christmas ornament? And the options are the Christmas tree ornament, the standard one on the tree, the ball, mistletoe, Christmas stocking, or like the tinsel. What is your favorite?
Wow.
I know.
Wow. We have a glaring omission there. I feel like what? No love for the angel on top of the tree.
You could put that other. Yes, you could write that down.
I feel like that's you gotta have something that tops your tree. So all that stuff is good, but I think that kind of the cherry on top, if you will, has got to be that angel or whatever. I know people like to get creative with that too. So I think that's probably my favorite.
Something I should with that. I should have my sportscast committee decide on these options. But hey, that's a good one, and I'll probably have it until next year because we only do these questions once a year. But yeah, Christmas is coming up next week, and of course, before Christmas are the College Football Championship games and things like that. Chris, Courtney, tell us a little bit about your site and what is the best way to reach you.
Yeah, so in terms of my website, go to wholeflockofducks.com. Like I said, we've been kind of up and running since 2018, and we cover everything kind of going around, the Oregon football program. It's team related analysis, it's recruiting analysis. We really kind of pride ourselves on trying to give kind of an honest and real look at everything that is going on with the Oregon football program. So you can find us at wholeflockofducks.com. You can find us on Twitter at _WFOD. You can follow me at C2 on Twitter. A lot of different ways to get in touch with us if you're interested in reading a lot of our content.
Check out Whole Flock of Ducks if you're a fan of the Ducks recruiting. Chris has years of experience analyzing college football and also recruitment, especially in the Pac-12 section. Very talented. And, of course, you can reach us at thesportscast.net. Thesportscast.net will be analyzing what happened today during the whole college football recruitment and, like, which players signed with who and things like that. Looking forward to it. And then tomorrow we have Victor Rocho and his show, Jones and Arocho. They'll be talking a little bit about NBA. And, of course, James Harden made his appearance, looked a little bit overweight. I imagine Chris saw that a little bit last night.
Yeah, I did. I was I don't know. I don't know if it was just a bad angle or what. I know James. I know James is. He's been enjoying the off season, and I'm not sure he's the most motivated to play for the Rockets right now. But it's funny. I'm in a fantasy basketball league, and I was talking to somebody. Who's like, "Oh, do you want to take? Are you interested in taking Harden number one?" I was like, "Man, you know what? I don't think I'm touching James Harden this year. It just seems like there's too much kind of going around him in terms of, is he going to stay in Houston? If he's going to be in Houston, how unhappy is he going to be? I just feel like this is going to be kind of a weird season for James Harden. We might not necessarily see the most consistent or the best version of James Harden this year, but I'm excited for the NBA season. It'll be nice to see. It feels like they just got done crowning the Lakers as a champion, but they're back at it, and very interested to see how they manage things not being in a bubble this year. Hopefully everything goes well for them, and they're able to get a full season in without too much disruption.
Absolutely. Great to see the teams back in their own stadium, playing in their own stadium. It feels like, I think with the whole COVID thing, the therapeutics, I think we got this, in control better than it was months ago. And remember, audience, this Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern, we're having our big college football show hosted by Nick Rossetti. We'll have the Sportscast team analyzing the playoffs and looking for what's going to happen and predictions and things like that. So a lot of things going on in football. Of course, the NFL week 15 or 16 this weekend. So a lot of things are closing down. A lot of teams are trying to make that last playoff spot. Really exciting. And then, of course, we got Christmas. So we got a lot going on this month, but really blessed, really grateful. And something that Chris said earlier before the show, hey, I'd rather have something than nothing. Yeah, I know there's a lot of asterisks out there, and especially in college football where things are a little bit fragmented, Pac-12 and Big Ten starting a little bit later, and that, affecting some things and changing things like the rules as well. Hey, Ohio State made it in to the which we didn't predict, actually. Northwestern versus Ohio State, Chris. Who do you got? Sorry about that.
Northwestern versus Ohio State. I think, it's great that Northwestern is able to make it to the Big Ten championship game. I personally don't think they stand much of a chance against Ohio State. I think kind of the biggest question going into Selection Sunday with the College Football Playoff Committee is determining what to do with Ohio State in relation to kind of everybody else. And so I would expect Ohio State to win that game, win it pretty handily, despite some of the interruptions that they've had with their own season. You're looking for a score. I think Ohio State's looking to prove a point in this game, not really unlike what happened in 2014, 2015, when they just beat the brakes off of Wisconsin. So I think looking for a score prediction, I think Ohio State wins 55-13, something along those lines. I think it's going to get ugly in Indianapolis.
Try to finish off with a bang to prove the College Football Playoff Committee, hey, we belong in the top four at a certain degree. Anyways, this is the Sportscast. A great night with Chris Courtney. Great show, Chris. Thanks for coming on.
Anytime. Appreciate it.